Hello and welcome. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. Together, we're going deep in the Word of God. Out here on the website, and I just want to show you, we've got a page out here now for Daniel. And with that, I've done something additional than what I have had before. So you go to Bible videos and you click on Daniel. You can always come to the website and find all our teachings from there. This is last week's Bible lesson. You can listen to that. And if you're really, and I'm not just shameless self-promoting here of watch my videos multiple times. If you really want to get something out of it, it's just like taking a class in college or grad school. You take the notes, you sit there and listen, and then you go back and you look at the notes again. Well, if you go back and listen to the video again, and I recommend playing it at 1.5 speed, something like that, makes it go faster. You get more out of it. It takes what you learned and it reinforces it. And what you take away from it is far more than just listening to it once. That's entirely up to you. That's not why I came out here on our Daniel page. If you come out here, we've got some resources. So I have put the life of Daniel timeline here, the divided kingdom timeline, map of the Babylonian Empire and where all that spread. And then down here, the timeline for the Neo-Babylonian Empire and just a map of the route the Jewish exiles would have taken to get over to Babylon. Now, with all of these things, and there's another map down here, just the other kingdoms that were in existence at that time. And I put the one picture of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And these pictures are cool. They're neat. I'm sure it was way more impressive than any artist's rendition of it. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, we don't know what they looked like, but they were really cool. But what you can do, you can right click on this image and then hit open image in a new tab. And it's going to take you to a new tab. And that way you can zoom in and scroll around and look at it and see it all much more clearly. So that's out there on the Daniel page on our website. So make sure and make use of that. So we're here and we are in Daniel 2. And just a quick catch up, get our brains up to speed. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were taken from Babylon or from Jerusalem, which was a very unfaithful place at the time. They were brought over and they were exemplary young men from the kingdom of Judah whom Nebuchadnezzar wanted trained to become part of his court. They passed all expectations. And we had the opportunity they had to live their faith. They weren't going to eat the food that was sacrificed to the gods of Babylon. And it was we need to look at those things as God gave them the opportunity to put their faith in action. And that's what they did. And everything that is recorded about Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, in everything, they are exemplary. Doesn't mean they were perfect. They were faithful. If you want an example of how to be faithful in a difficult situation, you can't go wrong with flipping open the pages of Daniel and reading there. So just one of those things to file away, because we are living in dark and dangerous times. We are living in times when the faith is persecuted, and it is going to be more so. So we want to know, where do I go for strength and reassurance during those difficult times? So we're in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. We'll stop right there. There's something here in Daniel 2 that is reminiscent of Matthew 2. In Matthew 2, the wise men came from where? They came from Babylon. The Magi, they came from Babylon, and they went to Herod the Great and said, we've come to worship he who is born King of the Jews. We saw our star in the east and have come to worship him. And it tells us that Herod the Great was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him was troubled. When a tyrant is troubled, when they're upset, when they're worked up, all of those around them who are in their court, in their sphere of influence, especially those who are closest to him, who know him best, are going to be afraid. With Herod, they were afraid. They knew that Herod had killed 2 of his own sons. This guy had no compunction about taking people out. It's kind of like Joseph Stalin had his sons killed, tortured and killed. Tyrants are tyrants, and they're always the same. And Nebuchadnezzar was a tyrant. He was a scary guy. So when it says that these guys who he called before him, we'll go through the different designations and what they were. When it says that they were troubled the minute they walked in, that all of them were called together at the same time. It's like standing outside the principal's office in high school, right? And you're looking around, and who all else is there? Well, all the guys who you were getting in trouble with are there, and you're looking at each other like, oh, holy cow, he knows. We're done. Okay. But worse, because back when I was in high school, back when I was a kid, the worst you could get was spanked or expelled. Here, it was a lot worse than getting spanked or expelled. So his spirit was troubled, and sleep left him. His sleep left him. He's really, really upset. So the king commanded that the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. Now we can rattle through this, and it doesn't really mean much to us. And you can even look at a lexicon, which is a dictionary for a specific book. You can look at a lexicon and look at it, and it's not going to give a whole lot of insight. I've got this resource I love to use. It's called the Bible Background Commentary of the Old Testament. And it really goes into things from a cultural standpoint. So I like to use this thing, the Bible Background Commentary of the Old Testament, because it looks at it more from a cultural perspective. So these guys, the magicians, the one is the term for the wise men of Egypt, which takes us back to Exodus when Moses went and appeared before Pharaoh. The guys who he called, it's the same guys, the same magicians. Now, why would there be Hebrew, Egyptian magicians in Babylon? Well, he'd done war with Egypt. He defeated Egypt in different places and had no doubt captured some people. So just like Daniel was brought from Judah, these guys were brought from Egypt to be court advisors. Okay. And then we've got sorcerers. These are what we would think of as magicians. They're the guys who cast spells, who did things. And we live in a day, well, it's getting more ambiguous as to what our world is what our world is spiritually. For the most part, we have grown up in and operated in a world that really doesn't take the spiritual seriously. It's quirky, it's weird, it's whatever. We don't pay it a lot of heed. The spiritual world, these guys did. These guys did. They believed, and rightly so. They believed that there were various spiritual entities that had different powers in different areas and different realms. And they were right. We've shortchanged all of that. But the sorcerers would kind of fall in to the realm of those who tried to use incantations and the like to manipulate and control or gain the favor of these spiritual entities. And then we've got the Chaldeans. Now, the Chaldeans, it can be used geographically as a term for that region, but they really, the way the term is used in other sources of literature, historically, these are the astrologers. They're the astrologers. And what you think of when you think of an astronomer or an astrologer, we have to adjust our thinking to what these guys were. They believed that the stars and the planets were spiritual entities. Okay. So tracking the stars, all of that stuff, the movement of the planets, etc., it had a different significance than it does today, at least popularly today. Okay. So basically, he called everybody in. It's like the president's upset and he calls in everybody, the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, the local police. He called for everybody, all of his advisors, anybody who could possibly give him an interpretation of this dream. So the broad scope of the different people who he called in and called together at the same time tells us how upset he was. This dream that unfortunately we're not going to get to today because there's too much stuff to cover before we get to the dream. We'll get to the dream next time. The dream was horribly upsetting to him. He knew it was something bad, but he just didn't know what. So they came in and they stood before the king and they're all looking at each other. What are you guys? Why are we here together in this same situation? And again, they knew who this guy was. He was upset. And if he's upset, he's visibly upset. They could see he's upset. They knew this was a big deal. So they were quaking in fear as they came in and approached. And the king said to them, I had a dream and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Again, his spirit's troubled. Everybody's spirit's troubled. They knew who this guy was and what he would do when he was upset because there was a track record of what he would do when he was upset. And these guys did not operate. You know, today, the people who really have power, if they want to crush and destroy you, they can crush and destroy you. But they generally just can't do it overtly, out for everybody to see. They've got to use back channel ways. They'll come after you. They'll put stuff on your computer that they can convict you over. They'll get you for tax things, whatever. If they want to crush and destroy you, you die in a plane crash, whatever. This guy didn't have to play those games. If he wanted you gone, you were just gone right then and there. If he wanted you cut in half, they did it in front of him. There was no compunction about what they could do. There was no limit to the power that he had. Okay. And he knew it. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, we'll come back to that. O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream and we will show the interpretation. We'll stop there. They said in Aramaic. Now, Aramaic is a Semitic language. Hebrew is a Semitic language. It's a Semitic language. It uses the same characters, the same letters as Hebrew, but it's not Hebrew. Okay. Just like Spanish uses the same letters for the most part as English, but it's not English. Okay. You can look at it. If I go here, we'll do this. There's verse 3. All of this is Hebrew. Here's verse 4. All of this is Aramaic. Now you tell me, and you tell the difference, which one's Hebrew and which one's Aramaic? And the answer is no. I can't even tell unless I go to try to translate it. And then I go, whoa, I'm not having any. Oh, yeah, this is the part that's in Aramaic. I don't know Aramaic. But the book of Daniel, from this point, from when they say in Aramaic, from here through the end of chapter 7, the book of Daniel is in Aramaic. Okay. Now, Aramaic was at the time one of the languages used in Babylon. Think about this, if you are ruling a vast empire and you're conquering all these different countries, all these different places, and they all speak different languages, the languages are roughly related to each other, but they're different language. What do? Well, you do the same thing international air travel does. You know what you have to be able to do to be an airline pilot and fly internationally, or a cargo pilot and fly internationally? You know what you have to be able to do? You have to be able to speak English. English is the language of international air travel. Okay. When the pilot talks to the tower, when the tower talks to the pilot, they're speaking in English. That way, the guy from Lithuania can land his jet in Atlanta and they can communicate. English is the language. It's also the language of international business, but very clear. It's an example with international travel, with air travel. Okay. If you're ruling an empire that has all these people from different places, you use a language that most of them are familiar with or is easy for them to learn. Because I can assure you, Babylonian, their language, that cuneiform stuff I showed you last time, not easy to learn. Aramaic, a lot of the world spoke Aramaic anyway. The Jews took Aramaic back with them to Jerusalem after they leave the captivity here in Babylon and Persia. When they go back, they're still speaking Aramaic. The most of the Jews talking to each other most of the time, they were speaking Aramaic more than they did Hebrew. Just kind of interesting. It's what they knew. It's what they knew. Not that they didn't know Hebrew, but they used Aramaic. Now, that's all interesting. Why is this part of the book in Aramaic and the rest is in Hebrew? God wanted this part of the book to be easily read by everyone. And as we move forward, we'll talk about that. But everybody in Babylon understood Aramaic. They knew Aramaic. The Chaldeans said to the king, that's those astrologer guys, and the astrologer, astronomer, same thing to them. Astrologer, astronomer, they're the ones who spoke up. What does that tell you? If you're in a group of these four people, four groupings of people, the heads of all these people, magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and Chaldeans, and when the king is saying he's troubled and upset, the ones who speak are the Chaldeans. What does that tell you about the Chaldeans? They're the big dogs. They're the most important. If somebody was going to speak, everybody deferred to the Chaldeans, the astrologers, the astronomers. That tells you which one was most important to them. It tells you who had the most sway, who had the most power. And it is the Chaldeans, the Magi, that Daniel instructed, who then 590 years from now, 620 years from now, we're going to come to Jerusalem looking for the one who's born King of the Jews. Daniel had a lasting impact in the land of Babylon. The Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, "O king, live forever." That's just sucking up, right? "O king, you're the greatest. We hope you reign forever, you awful, terrible tyrant, you. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation." Reasonable enough. It worked for Joseph in Egypt. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, "The word from me is firm." This is the way it is what he's saying. And when someone like him said the word from me is firm, he had no reason to change his mind. Do you know why people change their mind in politics? Do you know why? Fear. The mood of the country starts to move in a different direction. They're afraid they're going to lose their position. They're afraid that the people who really put them there, the guys with the money and the power, are going to be upset with them. "Oh, yeah, well, now we've reconsidered that and we're going to do it differently." This guy had no reason to reconsider. He had no need to reconsider. "If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins." That didn't mean good things for their families. "But if you show me the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor." Okay. They knew they were in trouble. This guy's lost his mind. He expects them to be able to interpret a dream that he hasn't told them. Now, from Nebuchadnezzar's standpoint, he's kind of smart. If you can tell me what the dream is, then I know you've really got vision from the gods to be able to tell me what the dream means. He really wanted to know what this dream meant. And we need to remember that when we get to the dream and its interpretation. He was really freaked out by this. He was upset. And he wanted to know what it was. And he wanted to make sure it was so important to him, he wasn't going to get duped. Okay? Proverbs 21:1 tells us that the Lord holds the king's heart in his hand, and like the rivers of water, he turns it wheresoever he will. This crazy behavior, this extreme maniacal demand that he makes here, it serves God's purpose. It serves God's purpose. As terrible as it is, and as it could have been, the Lord used it. Apply that to your own life. Even when things are really bad, when it seems that there is no hope, God turns all things for the good. He still uses it. Whatever the outcome might be, he uses it. Point being, no tyrant really has power over me. They don't. They don't. Because this life, this physical, corporeal existence here, it's only part of it. And eternally, it's a small part of it. So whatever the tyrants do, whatever they demand, whatever comes down from on high from them, there's still someone they answer to. And it's the same one we answer to, but our relationship is different. He's our heavenly Father. He loves us with that paternal, fatherly care. And he's got us no matter what. And we're going to see that reflected in Daniel's response to all of this. But isn't this the way of the world? Do what I say or I'll destroy you. You shall be torn limb from limb and your houses shall be laid in ruins. And that meant families too. But if you show me the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. That is the Faustian bargain. Sell out to me and all of this stuff you get. You want to be a star? You want to be famous? You want to have power? You can have it all. Just bow down before me and do what I say. Because if you don't, I own you. And there is literally hell to pay in this world if you don't obey, if you don't comply. That is the way tyrants operate. And you look at our world right now with these mandates where they have to force doctors and nurses to take this shot. It's so safe and effective, as Facebook tells us all the time. It's so safe and effective that you have to force people and threaten them with their livelihoods if they don't take it. And those of us who remember a sane America, those of us who remember something that approached a rational existence go, who do they think they are? Well, they think they're this guy. And they're serving the same person. They're serving the same entity. And we can't separate that from all of this. Nebuchadnezzar was serving his God, that false God. And that's why he's so wicked and twisted and evil. Therefore, show me the dream and its interpretation. They answered a second time and said, all the more pleading tone here, I can guarantee you, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know with certainty. Do you notice the very forceful, clear way he's saying things? And it's not lost on them. I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time because you see that the word from me is firm. I see what you're doing. Don't think you're fooling me. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. You're waiting. You figure if you stall, I'll calm down. And I'll realize that even for me, wiping out all of the people who serve in these very important functions, and we need to understand this. Magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and Chaldeans, these are really important people in their court and how they operated. Daniel ends up being the chief over these Chaldean guys. And he, for the most part, runs the country. These weren't, it's not like the show Fringe, where there's this fringe science off on the edge. No, this was core to how they operated and what they did. Saying that he was going to kill them all of them, and wipe out their families and destroy their homes was about as extreme as it got. And it probably would have been the most extreme thing Nebuchadnezzar ever did. He knows this is extreme. What does that tell you about how upset he is by this dream? Again, don't forget that. But he wants to know so badly that he doesn't care. And he knows they're stalling for time, thinking he'll calm down and not go through with this. Just because you're a tyrant doesn't mean you're stupid. Joseph Stalin was a complete, read up on the real history of Joe Stalin, Papa Joe, who that guy was. He was one evil, sick twist. Every now and then, he'd kill everybody who knew him. He'd hand them over to his torture guy, the guy who ran the KGB, Beria, depending on how you pronounce his name, Beria. And he wouldn't just have everybody killed. He'd let Beria torture them first, just in case they'd been hiding some information. And then he'd bring in a new group, an inner circle. And at that time, he'd rewrite history about him. There was nobody there to say that that wasn't the way things were. Now that's sick. He did it to his family. He did it to his best friends. That's sick. That's evil. That's twisted. Stalin was a smart guy. Just because you're a tyrant doesn't mean you're not smart. And you don't get to be the king who conquers Egypt and Assyria in the same battle and not be a smart guy. So my point is, don't just think he's a maniacal wackadoo. He is maniacal. He is evil. He's also smart. He knows what these guys are doing. And smart and maniacal, smart and a tyrant, smart and evil, that makes for a really nasty adversary. It makes for a really nasty taskmaster. And does that remind you of anyone? Like, oh, your adversary, the devil, prowls about like a roaring lion seeking whom he might devour. Lions are smart. They're smart. They know how to hunt people down. They know how to pick out the weak and pick them off. Just because they're evil, don't think they're not smart. And he's smart. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, and their voices were quivering and their knees were knocking when they said this stuff. Because when he said, tear them in pieces, he meant it. There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Remember their hierarchical view of how things work. The gods are up here. We're down here. Only the gods can reveal that to you. So what this has done, this behavior, this reaction to this dream, what it has done is it has set the stage. It's set the stage. Here's a good way to put it, especially in light of what Daniel's going to say. This dark event, and you kind of feel for these guys, right? What were they supposed to do? They're thinking about their kids at home. They'd be torn in pieces too. And it'd be done publicly for everyone to see, to make the point. They're scared. This is a dark, dark day. It's a dark time. But this darkness sets the stage because the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and like the rivers of water, he turns it wheresoever he will. Proverbs 21:1. So that the light of the truth, so that the true God, who assigned all these gods like Molech and the others to be in charge of the nations, and they went rogue and took the power for themselves and rebelled. Deuteronomy 32. This dark moment sets the stage for the light, the true God, and his servants to shine all the more brightly. A bright light is all the more bright when it's shining in the midst of the darkness. Perspective. You know what happens when you panic? You lose perspective, along with other things. You don't think. You don't ever panic. There's no place for fear in the heart of a believer. God's in charge. It's okay. And we're going to see that in Daniel. Because of this, the king was very angry and very furious and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. He's very angry. He's very furious. Just getting worse. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Now that brings something to mind, and I didn't bring it up earlier. Why wasn't Daniel there? He wasn't. They have to go find him. Him and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they have to go look for him. Only the main wise men were there. That's the way that would work. The leaders of the guild of the Chaldeans, of the sorcerers, of the magicians, etc., they would be called in. There's not room for all of them. When the president wants to find out what's going on with something with a foreign power, he doesn't call the whole State Department. He calls the Secretary of State and the head of the CIA and whatever else, right? There were a representative selection of each of these groups there. And it tells us something that Daniel wasn't there. We know how Daniel was viewed in chapter 1. We know what he ends up being here very shortly. He had not yet progressed to that level. And I think it also speaks to the fact that this is still very early on. Remember, they came, they were trained for 3 years. They appeared before Nebuchadnezzar, and he said he was blown away by how impressive these guys were. But you know what they still were? 25 years old? 23? 24? Who knows? How many of you out there in listener land, you run a company. You can be really impressed with somebody. He's 23. Are you going to make him a VP? No. If somebody in the corporation at which you work, he's a rising star, right? He's smart. Everybody knows he's going places, but he's not there yet. There's no doubt he's going to end up on the top floor. It's obvious to everyone. He's got to make his bones. He's got to get experience, all of those things. And that all applies here more than likely to why Daniel wasn't there yet. But when it comes to making your bones, he's about to in a very big way. When the chips are down, real leaders, when the chips are down, those who were very special, they rise to the top. They rise to the top. We see that in history again and again. People who were existing in relative obscurity in the time of a crisis, they rise to the top. Why? Because everybody recognizes their abilities. And this is a divine operation here that God is sending a message through this dream. And make no mistake, this dream was from God. He's sending a message through this dream, but he's also elevating his servant, Daniel, to a position of preeminence in the empire of the day. A lot going on here. All of that coming out of this horribly dark episode. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. Now, this Arioch guy in Rome, they were the Praetorians. Saddam Hussein, same part of the world, had his, what did he call his elite guard? They're the ones who serve only the ruler. Okay, the Praetorians didn't go out and fight in battles. They were super soldiers who only protected the emperor and protected Rome. That kind of thing is who this Arioch guy is. He's the captain of the king's guard who'd gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. But how did Daniel answer? How did Daniel answer? He answered, he replied with prudence and discretion. In the midst of all this furor, in the midst of everyone being terrified, going to be torn in pieces, Daniel's unfazed. Calm, 23 years old, replies with prudence and discretion. He's calm. He's rational. Daniel, and this is a theme we could lay over the book of Daniel. Daniel never loses perspective. He never loses perspective. I lose perspective when I allow the things of this world, the events in my very real life, to frighten me. When I do that, I make the biggest mistake. I take my almighty God, who created all, who spoke the world into existence, and I make him itsy bitsy small. Kind of like in Aladdin. He fits in a bottle, right? No, my God's always who he is. And he always cares for me the way he does. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't change. His love for me, his concern for me, the fact that he's going to work everything out for my good, the fact that he turns tragedy into triumph, it always applies. Daniel never forgets that. Neither do Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They never forget that. And that is why when the captain of the king's guard comes to kill him, and they're going to make a public spectacle of it. That's why he didn't just walk in, whop off their heads. This was going to be a public spectacle. That's how these things were done. Daniel's unfazed, calm as a cucumber. He replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill all the wise men of Babylon. And he declared to Arioch, the king's captain, that he declared, he's speaking somewhat forcibly here. He's not cowering. That's why he says he declared, because that word seems kind of incongruent, doesn't it? This guy's coming in to haul you off to kill you, and you're declaring something to him. You're proclaiming something to him. Why is the decree of the king so urgent? And then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel. He, again, unfazed, and he doesn't know what it is yet. He doesn't know what's going on, but now he does. Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel. And Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. Now, exactly how he does that, we don't know. I don't know why it opened up there. That's weird. We don't know how he did that. There were channels you went through. If he did that through Arioch, whatever, we don't know. But give me some time, and I'll do this for you. Even in that, the confidence that he has. And there has to be, and this is my thinking, there has to be in Daniel a realization of God's plan for him. That God intended to do special things through him and through his friends. And that's part of where that confidence comes from, perhaps. But he didn't hesitate. I can give me some time. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. What did he do? He went to his friends and said, pray with me. He went to his friends and said, let's get down on our knees and ask God to bless us in this, to give us the ability to get out of this mess. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. It is made known to him and all of these things. What's the first thing Daniel does? He blessed the God of heaven. Faith gives wisdom. Faith gives perspective. Faith gives courage. Faith is also humble. Faith is humble. There was nothing in Daniel that he knew what this dream was and how to interpret it. There wasn't any of that. He recognized it fully as coming from God. And a misstep that I often make in my own life, and I think is common to us as believers, is we forget that all the good stuff comes from God. And we need to recognize it as his blessing, whether it's comfort, whether it's wealth, whether it's success, whether it's health, intelligence, abilities, skills, all of that stuff, all of it comes from him. And without him, we've got nothing. We've got nothing. So the first thing Daniel does in this, think of how intense this whole thing was. He got the news. He went and talked to Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. They prayed about it. Boom. God told him what it was. Whew. Can you imagine the relief, jumping for joy? But the first thing he did before he jumped for joy was he blessed the God of heaven. And how did he do it? With these words. Daniel answered and said, this is the how he blessed the God of heaven. He's giving credit where credit is due. All glory, laud, and honor go to the king, not to us. I, you, we are servants. We serve. And what a thrill it is. What a blessing it is to serve such a great, mighty, and awesome God. What did he say? Just listen to this. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. What do we recognize Daniel for? Wisdom. What do we recognize Nebuchadnezzar for? Might. It all comes from God. It all comes from God. We're going to see that with Nebuchadnezzar in another dream. And then what happens? The might comes from God. If he doesn't want you to succeed, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it all, who struggle trying to build anything at all. Psalm 127, King Solomon. All the blessings come from God, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. Can you do that? Fall is here. The leaves are changing. He removes kings and sets up kings. Just like he changes the seasons, he removes kings and sets up kings. It's going to be Babylon. It's going to be Nebuchadnezzar, then somebody else, then Darius, then Alexander the Great, then Caesar, then the United States and Great Britain, and on and on and on and on. God changes that calendar. He gives wisdom to the wise. It's why they're wise. And knowledge to those who have understanding. Where does understanding come from? It comes from wisdom. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness. I don't know what's in the darkness. I can't see through the darkness. He can. He does. He knows. And the light dwells with him. There, that theme of darkness and light that John in his Gospels and especially in his epistles uses so well to illustrate the workings of our God. He makes the unknown clear. You know, there's so many different ways you can view the darkness. It's unknown. Are you afraid of the unknown? Yeah. Are you afraid of the dark? Of course you are. Don't tell me you're not afraid of the dark. Go out, way out in the wilderness on a completely pitch black night when there is no moon and tell me you're not afraid. We're just not afraid of the dark because we don't have to deal with it. I got a fancy flashlight and headlights on my car and all that. The dark is frightening to us, but it's not frightening to him. The things that scare me don't scare him, because what does the light do? The light displaces the darkness. The light drives the darkness away and all the evil, scary, creepy things that are in the darkness. The problem in our world today, and this is vitally important, the problem in our world today is that the light is not being shown out there. The light is the truth of the Word of God. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. His light, he's the light of the world. It's not shining brightly. We don't speak up. The church is silent, completely silent. There's this huge alien revelation that's going on right now, and the church doesn't say boo. There are these mandates to take this mRNA gene therapy death jab, and the church says bupkis. When the light decreases, the wolves come closer to camp. When the fire goes out, the wolves take over the camp. Light, darkness. We see it playing out in our world. And that's why we need to speak the truth. And when we do, we need to understand that we're shining the light of the truth, and God blesses that. I'm not saying everything's going to be sunshine and roses, but God blesses it because this world's not all there is. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, he knew who he was. He knew the history. He knew Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph, and Moses, and all of them. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise. All the praises to the Lord, for you have given me wisdom and might. Two are the same thing. Did you get that? The two are the same thing. You have given me wisdom and might. With wisdom comes might. The world may not recognize it. Others may not recognize it, but it is might. It is the might that matters. For you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's matter. All right, just want to see where I want to go. We're going to stop there because I just as soon leave that to go with the interpretation of the dream. It'll be a nice transition for next time. Think about those things, those themes of wisdom, of might, of darkness, of light, of calm in the face of tyranny, prudence, discretion, peace. And that word doesn't even come up here, but what did Daniel have? Daniel had the peace that surpasses all understanding. Why? Because he knew who his God was, and he knew that his life was a hand-in-hand walk in service to his Lord. And may God grant us the wisdom and the faith in this latter day, in this dark day, to view our lives, to understand our lives the same way. Do remember, you can come out here. We got all this stuff out here for the book of Daniel. We've got our website. We've got all our different things out here, resources of all kinds. Go and spend some time, explore, look around. We put this thing out here, not because I didn't have anything better to do than to make a website. I put it out here because I want it to be a resource for you. We've got over 300 videos in our video knowledge base. We've got hundreds of documents in our document knowledge base. We've got helpful websites, information that helps you have a feel, an understanding of what's going on in this sinful world. I love our about page. I see a lot of people going to our about page. This guy, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, just real quick, because he's like Daniel. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a young Lutheran pastor from Germany, and he was in the United States in the 30s, and he saw what was going on with the evil in his own country, and he couldn't stay here. He went back. He ended up going to a death camp, and he ended up dying, but he went back to minister to his people when he could have stayed here, and pastors didn't get drafted. He could have stayed here and been comfortable and safe. But this is my favorite Dietrich Bonhoeffer quote. Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. And that quote carries all the more power and importance because the guy who said it died living it. And we need to pray for the courage of our convictions. I was interacting with a gal on Gab just this weekend, gal who lost her job because she wouldn't take the jab. And you know what she's doing? She's taking, and I do a VAERS weekly summary update, the red box summary update every week. This gal wrote the VAERS data, open VAERS, about all the deaths with vaccines with this shot, this jab, and is standing outside her place of employment holding up the signs. I just absolutely love it. She's got the courage of her convictions. And this, taking the shot, not taking the shot, this is just phase one. And who knows how many phases of the onslaught that is coming. We need to pray for courage. We need to pray for faith, because faith begets wisdom, and wisdom begets courage, and courage begets action, just like Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Go out here and read our About page, talks about why we do what we do and our take on things. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you found this teaching a blessing. If you did, smash that like button. When you do, that tells other people this is worth watching. So smash that like button. While you're down there below the video, click on subscribe. And when you subscribe, make sure and hit that notification bell. That way you're made aware when we put out a new video. Share this video with others. Speak. Share this video with others. Put it out on your social media feed. Let other people see it. And do drop by and pay us a visit. If you know our name, you know how to find us. decodingthedeception.com. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. Together, we're going deep in the Word of God. God bless and have a great day.